Welcome to the inaugural video of the Bad Game Bonanza. I hope you haven't eaten anything particularly rich or acidic in the last few hours, because we're all about to get on Mr. Pitchford's wild ride, Duke Nukem Forever. Duke Nukem Forever was initially pitched or announced, or I don't know what it was and to what extent, back in 1997. And it didn't see the light of day until 2011. That is over 10 years. And what do they have to show for it? Not a whole lot, I have to be honest. There really isn't any more context to this game that I can think of that's worth talking about, so we'll just get right into the actual scoring and then see where that takes us.
Quit wasting my time.
Right off the bat, 3 out of 10 for plot. The plot was not even predictable in a way that I'd find enjoyable, and really the best it's going to do is put you off, and at worst you're just gonna feel a little, I guess, is revulsion the right word to use here? Yeah, that'll do. The only points this game gets in the plot department are because it doesn't get in the way of the gameplay. However, it is something where you think, you know what, it actually would have been a lot better if the aliens did come in peace and Duke was just being a jerk. That would fit with Duke's character. It would give us a reason to see that yes, Duke is a little behind the times. Yes, Duke is an old part of a new world. And who knows, maybe by the end, everything happens mostly the same, but now the entire government of the world and the aliens is out to get Duke. Perfect sequel, Duke Nukem Intergalactic Outlaw. Look at that, I fixed your plot, Mr. Pitchford. And again, we're seeing that number 3 out of 10 for the world building part of this review because this is the kind of world that not even a 12-year-old would think up of during their weird power fantasies. And I can't believe I'm unironically saying this, but everything in Duke Nukem just feels like some sort of demented fantasy of a normally timid office worker. I really don't see the need for half of these levels, or at least if you're going to do them a bit better. Nearly any way to flesh out this world, make it more interesting, or explain anything in this world is completely traded off at a misguided attempt to try and make Duke look a little bit cooler, despite the fact that you keep on wondering, how does Duke pay for all this? Duke has been doing literally nothing for nearly 13 years, and on top of that, there is no one in his casino. Who is buying all this stuff? Who is spending money here? Nothing. The more you think about the world Duke Nukem takes place in, the more you think, wow, this again is basically a fantasy because nothing is fleshed out, nothing actually makes sense. Can we please stop talking about the story of Duke Nukem? It's starting to make my whole body hurt, not just my head, my whole body, please, let's stop.
Damn, you're ugly.
Alright, let's talk about the looks of Duke Nukem as briefly as possible so we can immediately look away. In the graphics department, it gets a 7 out of 10. How does it get that score, you ask me? Well, 2 ways to determine the graphics, each worth 5 individual points. One question, does the game look good given the medium it is presented in, e.g. 16-bit, 8-bit, intentionally early 3D graphics, voxel, etc, etc, and it gets a 2 out of 5 there. It's really bleh. However, it gets a full 5 out of 5 in the second question, are the assets well put together, because I did not see any clipping or this game is making me physically sick to talk about it. But yeah, the game is well put together if anything. Despite all the engine changes and all that stuff, the game still at least doesn't have any obvious seams in it, or at least ones that I could find while trying not to vomit. Okay, before my lungs give out from talking about how this game looks, let's go into aesthetic. Short answer, 0 out of 10. This game is a sea of browns and grays that are all kind of muddled together even at the top tier graphics settings, and it just doesn't look good. There is no visual strikingness to it, there is no unique look, it doesn't look. If anything, it's just a vehicle of browns and grays for Duke Nukem and his red little wife beater to go through and occasionally shoot something between hiding behind pillars and stuff. As for sound design, this game gets a 7 out of 10, primarily because the soundtrack, while not my cup of tea, is well put together. The Foley is decent. You can hear gunshots, even if they are default noises, pretty well, footsteps, and all that good stuff. And finally, full points for voice acting, because it got the original voice actor back, who just does such a great job. Even if Duke is utter drivel, the voice actor does not phone it in. He does a great job. As for everyone else, really, Duke's voice actor is carrying this sound department, like sound design thing. By the way, if you're wondering why I'm being so harsh in any particular segment, I'm just going to reiterate that this game took 13 15 years to make. And this is just a perfect example of how time is not a substitute for skill. In fact, I'd be willing to wager if whoever was finally in charge of this game had just said, you know what, everyone go back to school, and everyone went back to their respective colleges or trade schools, got degrees or certifications in what they were doing, and then came back, we might have had a better game, because games can be good and take time. Look at Prey. Look at the original BioShock. Look at Grand Theft Auto 5. Those all took a long time to make, and they were great because people knew what they were doing. But if you take a long time to do something, but you don't know what you're doing, it's still going to be trash, and if anything, people are going to look at it even more negatively than they would if you did it in, say, a couple years or even a few months, because you had all the time in the world to do this thing, but you still just completely screwed it.
Ooh, that's gotta hurt.
Speaking of things that there are absolutely no excuses for, how about that gameplay? For core gameplay, Duke Nukem Forever gets a 3 out of 10. Because you know what? It's just not fun. Let me summarize the entire gameplay loop of Duke Nukem. You run out, eventually hide in behind a pillar or a wall or something for 30 seconds while your ego recharges, and you eventually get to a turret segment where you have to shoot things for about 5 minutes before starting the whole thing over. Occasionally there's things to mix it up. Sometimes turrets are replaced with driving your little monster truck, but that's the entire game. It's not even particularly interesting shooters. It's pretty basic as far as shooters goes. You've got your machine gun, your shotgun, rockets, pistol, done. There are almost no interesting weapons here, and the ones that they do try to make interesting, like the freeze ray, the shrink ray, are just not fun to use. And let me talk about that hiding behind the pillar thing. Duke Nukem does not have an actual health points bar. He has an ego bar. And you know how you get more ego? You gotta go collect toxic masculinity points. You gotta go grope walls, you gotta go skip leg day, drink excessively, all that stuff. That's how you increase your ego, by going around and cheating at games and being a jerk. That's it. And you know, it's funny because for all like the super manly macho cool stuff Duke does, how does he like go about fighting? Well, he's in the fight for about 5 seconds before he has to go cower behind the corner because someone hurt his feelings. That is the whole thing with the ego bar. That is what it boils down to. Oh no, the alien said I don't look good. I'm gonna go hide in this other hallway I cleared until my ego replenishes. Yeah, you can drink beer, which makes you absorb a lot less damage, and you can overtly take what I think is Dianabol and just have high melee. It's like, it's an uncool version of the Rage Orb from Doom. That is all it is. Oh yeah, there's grenades too, which you're gonna have to save your grenades for all the boss fights because bosses only take damage from explosive-based weapons, which sometimes are few and far between or so inaccurate that you have to rely on chaining grenades and landmines to get their HP down. As far as player character handling and overall like functionality goes, Duke Nukem Forever gets a 6 out of 10, primarily owing to the fact that the menus are easy to navigate enough, and the controls are, well, as responsive as you'd like them to be, but not an extension of yourself. And it loses most of its points in the fact that the player character does not do anything you want them to do. Duke is so disappointing to play as. It's a good example I can think of is way back in the day when Total Biscuit, God rest his soul, did his WTF is of Duke Nukem Forever. The first thing I noticed in the intro segment was, hey, where's Duke Nukem's squat rack? And that really explains a lot of how badly Duke Nukem handles. Like, Duke jumps like he has skipped every leg day since 1995, and he runs like the last time he ever did any sort of cardio was when they made him run the mile in high school if he wanted to graduate. And lastly, in the gameplay department, it gets a 3 out of 10 for diversity of gameplay because, just like how I talked about previously, this entire game boils down to shoot your way through rooms full of enemies while mostly cowering behind corners, going to a turret segment, doing a puzzle, repeating. And the puzzles aren't even that good. It seems like they're designed to confuse a simpleton, but anyone else is just kind of frustrated with how tedious they are. And I'm gonna take this time to talk about the other part of Duke Nukem I really don't like that doesn't fit into any of the categories, in that Duke talks a lot of trash for somebody who is a very bad game himself. Like, Duke tries to throw shade at Master Chief. He tries to throw shade at Isaac Clarke in Dead Space. He even tries to diss Mario. And it's so embarrassing coming from Duke's player character, because I think even Duke is aware that he is in an absolutely terrible video game. I'm guessing the writers thought this might be a way to show that Duke is self-aware, but really every time Duke tries to be self-aware, especially when he calls out about how much he doesn't like the puzzle segments, or when he references another video game, he just comes off as some sort of has-been loser that thinks at one time he could have carried his weight among the likes of Mario and Master Chief, but really, he was never that good to begin with. He was just kind of interesting in how shocking his humor and mannerisms were, but he was otherwise run-of-the-mill. And now that he's not interesting, but from a shock factor perspective, it's just trash. Let's take a break from this for a bit, just because this is gonna start making you guys sick too if we just do it nonstop and do another one of these things. One of the things I notice Duke Nukem frequently says in his annoying one-liners is whenever he kills one of the pig guys, he says pork chop sandwiches. So let's make some of those. You're gonna need some spices, some flour, a few eggs, and pork chops. Yeah, that'll do it. We'll get to the rest of the stuff later. All right, first order of business, absolutely pulverize those pork chops with your tenderizing hammer. You want them to be about half the thickness they originally were and about twice the surface area, because you want them to cover the whole bun. You don't want to have any dead space, so to speak, in your pork chop sandwich. And once those are all nice and flat, maybe put some salt and pepper on them if you want to season them, but most of the seasoning is going to come from the flour and breading we put on. So get a couple containers, beat your eggs into one of the containers, and then pour the flour and whatever spices you like into the other one. Personally, I like a few things like a bit of onion powder, a bit of seasoned salt, and just enough paprika to where the whole flour mixture is a very light shade of pink, and that's all you need. So now what you're gonna do is you're gonna get everybody breaded. So do what's called wet hand, dry hand, which I don't think I do right here, and dunk all the pork chops in the egg mixture. Then pull it out, dunk it in the flour, dunk it back in the eggs and back into the flour one more time, and then set aside. Don't be like me and have them stacked. Make sure all the pork chops have their own spot, or you're gonna get some weird caked on areas later. Okay, we got all pork chops ready to go. Now, you're gonna need a sizable pan, and you wanna fill this maybe an inch tops full of vegetable oil. Be very, very careful with this stuff. As a guy who has had second-degree burns from grease, they are extremely unpleasant, and you really don't wanna be getting into that silver sulfadiazine. That stuff, it's not fun. Now, very carefully, put your pork chops into the fryer. They should be like just a little bit uncovered on the tippy top, and that's okay because we're gonna flip them. Once they're in, make sure you have a proper set of tongs or something to rotate the pork chops when they're done. They should be about 5 minutes on each side because you're literally frying these things. By the way, medium heat, maybe a little higher, is more than enough for this oil. Once everyone's fried and out, give it a couple minutes between batches of pork chops before you go again so that the oil can reheat itself, and then continue frying the rest of your pork chops. You'll know when they're done because they're this lovely golden brown color, and they have, like, you could just see the crunchiness on the outside. You're also gonna wanna take these out and put them on a paper towel or something before you immediately plate them because they're gonna be greasy. Now, once you have all that, I'm going for realism here. Because the Duke Burger place that you fight in, I did not see a single vegetable in Duke Nukem's eating establishment, and I'm starting to feel that the reason the game takes 6 hours to complete is that 6 hours for doing whatever Duke is doing today, 8 hours to sleep, and then the rest of Duke's waking hours are spent on the toilet because his diet is so meat and protein dense. So all we're gonna do here is a sauce. My sauce is almost like a deviled eggs mixture, except without the egg yolk, where you're gonna want mayo, mustard, a healthy squirt of sriracha because I am millennial trash, and a little bit of vinegar to help give it like that taste. If you really want, put some pickles or whatever you want in this sandwich, but this sauce in the meat is all you need. Get that sauce all nice and good and mixed, then slather it as liberally as you like onto your buns. I'm using those cheapo ballpark buns because they get the job done and don't get in the way of anything. And then sauce, meat, bun, good to go. Serve it with, I don't know, a 40-ounce beer, which is clearly not 40 ounces, just like Duke Nukem would. Enjoy your pork chop sandwiches. I hope you've enjoyed this little escape from the video we have done, because now we gotta go back and finish reviewing Duke Nukem Forever. And I don't want to do it either. Let's just get it done. G.I. Joe!
Rest in pieces.
All right, time for the easy points that fill out a game's score. Optimization is an 8 out of 10. The game boots quickly, the levels load reasonably fast, the frame rate is consistent. You can't always hold a 60 FPS frame rate because a lot of the pre-rendered animations, particularly cinematics and whenever you kick a door in, are all locked at 30 FPS. So that's gonna be jarring. And as far as stability goes, 10 out of 10, just because the game doesn't freeze, the game doesn't crash, it handles its own assets, and that's all I ask for stability. If you can do that, you will get the easiest 10 out of 10 possible for a category. So it's actually kind of impressive if a game screws this up. Now, overall, that leaves the final score for Duke Nukem Forever at 50 out of 100, which I feel is deserving. They gave it a 50% effort, they got a 50% score. That's all for today. I hope you're ready because Mr. Pitchford's Wild Ride is not the only roller coaster in this amusement park that is the Bad Game Bonanza, and please feel free to subscribe, like, and contribute to my Patreon so I can afford therapy after this nightmare. Thank you. Sign-offs are stupid and I do not know how to do them. Goodbye.
Those? Yeah, Table Boy here is determined to find this new table.
We can put it like sideways on the floor.
That's right. That's a good idea.
Just in case. I don't want him to like jump and...
Sorry, Table Boy, you can't have a table. Your Table Boy days are over. Oh, I was gonna get that for you, honey. I got it. Watch your feet.
Just like this for now.
And we can put something in front of the things like, there you go. Good thinking. And we further optimize the space.
So that way if he jumps, he's just going to jump on the tree and then on the floor or on the box.
Oh yeah, I see what you're talking about. Your Table Boy days are over.
He's not going to like try to jump, I hope, on this thing here.
We're about to find out. You're too chunky to fit through there. Chunky. You have lost a good bit of weight since we put you on the diet snack. You want a pet now? You never want pets. I'm gonna pet you anyway. Oh, fine. I'll open it up for you just a bit. Oh, Table Boy, what you gonna do? Oh, snap. Oh, Table Boy's exploring. Oh, I see what you want to do. Let me move this one at least, because this is empty and you're just gonna trip over it. And there you go. You got a fun little path to your tree.